At First Partners Bank, our passion is for helping your business thrive. As our customers go about the business of building their successes, we're working right alongside them because when they dream, we dream. Just like a modern-day fountain of youth, the team at La Vie MD provides their clients with a customized experience that leaves them feeling refreshed and years younger. However, like with most businesses, taking a daily trip to the bank was both time-consuming and distracting. That's why Roy Savoy, the owner of La Vie MD, has partnered with First Partners Bank. After reviewing his needs, First Partners Bank developed a business banking plan that included courier service. Now, with their bank deposits scheduled for pickup on a daily basis, La Vie MD can concentrate on what's really important, their clients. As a customer of First Partners Bank, you enjoy the privileges of our partnership banking philosophy. What's more, First Partners Bank has the business banking solutions specifically designed to save your business time and money. Discover what it means to have a banking partner, because when you succeed, we succeed. Call us today at 205-822-5500 or visit our website at firstpartnersbank.com. First Partners Bank, member FDIC.
It's 6:05. Welcome into the show again. Superstation 101, Leland Live in the afternoon. A second ago, I told you I had a heartwarming, uplifting story. We'll do that at 6:35. The following conversation may not be it because we're going to talk about firing people.
Why are you looking at me?
Like, why are you looking at me?
Why are you looking at me?
No, this is our regular business sort of education segment that we do on Thursday nights, and I'm getting just strong feedback on people are enjoying kind of hearing this side of things with some real experts tonight. Charles Wilkinson. And this is all brought to you by our good friends at First Partners Bank. They believe in educating people on this stuff. So I want y'all to pay attention for two reasons. Either you have employees or you are one. And either way, there sometimes comes a time when you have to part ways. Charles is a human resource management expert. Charles, I appreciate you coming back, man.
My pleasure.
We talked a lot about hiring people, dealing with employees last time. And I told you, I said, I want you to come back and talk about that difficult time when you have to part ways. And we're going to do that for a few minutes.
Absolutely. There's no shortage of people problems.
You've either been through this on one end or the other or know somebody that has. It's just part of life in the business world. Am I wrong?
It is. When a company extends an employment offer, then an employee accepts that. There's great hope that it's going to last for a long time and be mutually beneficial. But so often it doesn't. It's not always the employee. Sometimes it's the manager. Sometimes it's the company. But, it seldom pans out to be everything everybody hopes it will be. There's problems, and just like any relationship, bumps in the road that have to be dealt with. But that's just, it's what HR professionals do.
They have to make the decisions and set it up there's a process, because it's a whole lot harder, especially from a legal standpoint, to terminate someone or have to let someone go than it is just to quit on the employee side, just to walk in one day and go, you know what, I'm done, I'm out.
Well, it is. And, probably one of the riskiest decisions an employer is going to make is a termination decision.
Yeah.
And it's very expensive. When a relationship doesn't pan out, the employee loses their income, they lose their benefits. It really upsets their world. But the company, if they've invested a lot in recruiting and training that individual, all that money's lost, and it's going to be duplicated because they now have to fill the position all over again. And aside from the hard dollar costs, there's all these soft dollar costs, the productivity, what damage is done to the relationship with the customers, what's the morale of the team going to be when they're now having to do the job of two people instead of one because there's a vacancy on the team. So it can be very expensive when it doesn't work out. But the nature of the termination decision, again, it's the most risky because the employee's leaving unhappy, perhaps feeling they've been treated unfairly, and that's depending on how you manage the termination meeting or how you've done in coaching them and trying to bring them along, how they feel like they've been treated fairly. They may seek a court to kind of
go get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer.
Now, somebody told me one time, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that if you ever have to, if an employee's not working out, they should almost see it coming. In other words, you've laid the groundwork, you've set the expectations, they know they're falling short, it's easier to deal with in that moment. But sometimes you worry about that too. But I mean, how do you handle that when you know it's starting to not work out, or maybe you've got to make that decision?
Well, I think the common thing I see is that companies are so slow to take issue with workplace problems, whether it's behavior or performance, and there are a number of reasons for that. Some are just wanting to do the right thing. They want to err on the side of caution and just give that person, a third and fourth, second chance, just to make sure that we've given them everything they need to be successful in the job. And part of that's coaching and training and resources and such as that. So they're very benevolent employers. They want to go the extra mile to give them the second chance. And then sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you feel like an employee is just trying to get fired. I mean, you can't think of any reason why we continue to deal with these same problems over and over. But sometimes you do have to make a decision that, it's not working out. And it is a tough decision, but it's one that has to be dealt with. And it has to be done in a timely manner. When you've got performance issues in the workplace, you can't wait 2 or 3 months down the road and decide to deal with it. It needs to be just like positive reinforcement. It's best when it's done at the time. But performance issues need to be dealt with real time, and there's a certain way to do that. And I think there are a lot of things you can do to impact a positive outcome, but not always.
Is there damage that's done by waiting too long to the other employees' morale at the place when it's plainly obvious that this needs to happen, but you as an employer trying to drag it out? Is there a lot of other damage that can be done by waiting too long?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so funny. By the time many organizations decide it's time to take issue with the performance, everybody's in agreement, the coworkers, the managers, because it's become such a poison apple. There's such disruption in the workplace. And I think when it gets to that point, when it goes too long and it's starting to manifest itself in other ways, it's not just they're not meeting deadlines or the quality of the work's not good. Now they're disruptive. Now they're damaging other relationships with coworkers and team members. And so oftentimes what does spur an organization to take issue is they're getting complaints from the team members, from others in the organization, from customers perhaps, and it really forces their hand sometimes to deal with it.
Do you need a reason to fire somebody? That's a simple question, but I get asked that a lot. Do you have to have an excuse? Do you have to tell them why, or can you just say, we're done?
It really depends on where you are. In Alabama, we're in employment at will state, and most people think that means you can fire someone for any reason or no reason, and for the most part, that's true. There are some exceptions to that, and you'll see it often on employment applications and handbooks. We're an at-will employer, and that means that we can discharge you at any time. There's no guarantee of a specific length of employment under that scenario. And it's a little bit unnerving when you're an employee to read that and sign that. What does that really mean? And sometimes there's an exceptions to that companies create either on purpose or by accident. If you have an employment agreement, certainly it has provisions in there for how you can be terminated upon what circumstances. And there's this exception under Alabama law for an implied contract where if we have language in our handbook that says something to the effect that we're only going to terminate people for just cause or for cause, or as long as you're doing a good job, you've always got a job here. I mean, sometimes people make statements to that effect in the recruiting process because we're trying to get people to feel good about accepting a job with us, and we want to do everything we can to kind of set the hook and reel them in. And sometimes we may go a little bit too far in that regard by making promises that we didn't intend, like, as long as you do a good job, you've got a job here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can fire people. At-will employment basically says that either the employee or the employer can terminate employment at any time for cause or no cause, for good cause or bad cause, with or without notice. And again, the exceptions are the implied contract. And in Alabama, you can't fire someone for filing a workers' comp claim, for example. But pretty much you can decide at any point as an employer and employer to separate.
See, I assume you always got to be sensitive to age discrimination and sex discrimination and all these other discrimination claims if you're dealing with employees.
Right, of course. And that goes without saying that, there are federal laws that prohibit a termination decision solely on the basis of some protected category like race, religion, color, national origin, age, disability or veteran status, gender. So you can't terminate someone because of that. Now, you need a business reason, and you ask the question, do you need to have a reason? Do you have to give a reason? Well, there's not a requirement. In some states, you have to give a reason, but it's usually a best practice to give a reason because if I'm caught off guard, if I am surprised by the termination decision as an employee, naturally I'm human. I want to know why. And if I don't get a reason why, I'm suspect that there's something going on here that you're not willing to talk about. And it forces me to go to EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and file a claim so I can get that information, or go find a lawyer, as you said earlier. So I think, part of doing a good job in managing performance is making sure that people are getting constant feedback, good and bad, on performance, so it doesn't come as a surprise. Really, I think one of the basic elements of being a manager is to give people feedback on their performance. But I also believe that it then becomes incumbent upon that employee to do something positive with that information, to change behavior, to change their work style or performance, to meet those objectives that are set by the company. And the company has the right to say, this is what we expect, these are the goals that we have set for you, these are our expectations. And if you're falling short of that, they have a right to make a change. So I think if the manager does a good job, that it doesn't come as a surprise, and basically the employee is given enough rope to terminate themselves.
Some people just see it coming and may just leave because they know it's not a fit.
Right.
And sometimes it's just not a fit.
Right. And that's ultimately the best outcome to that. If you've got a situation where it's not a good match, either it's a personality conflict with the manager and employee, or the nature of the work is not acceptable to the employer, the work environment, if they're constantly getting negative feedback on their performance, they can decide to change something that they're doing to make it better, get positive feedback, or they can decide to go somewhere else. I mean, that's certainly their prerogative.
Is there are there things that common mistakes people make that you shouldn't say, stuff you shouldn't do during that moment when the whole termination goes down?
Absolutely. There are several, there's probably 8 or 9 of those things, but basically you want to keep those meetings kind of short and sweet. I mean, you don't want to go in and start offering apologies and chit chat for 15 minutes before you deliver the message. You want to kind of have a short meeting. And this is the termination meeting we're talking about. You want it to be short, get to the point, not really offer any apologies. Even if someone else made the decision for you, maybe you don't disagree with the decision, you don't tell the employee that someone else made it, or I disagree with it, or if it was up to me, you'd still be here.
Right. But isn't that human nature when you like the other person, but it's just not working out and you got to do this thing?
It is.
To apologize.
It's human nature. And you can say things like, I feel badly about this, I'm sorry it didn't work out. I think that's a true human emotion, but you don't want to do anything that's going to cause that employee not to accept the decision or to argue the decision. The other mistake I see people make is that they let emotion take control. You've got a business statement to deliver, and you don't know what reaction you're going to get from the employee. They could be angry, they could be relieved, they could be, all sorts of emotions. And so you don't want to argue with anyone. It's not negotiable at that point. And you don't want to open the door to negotiate or to try to explain it beyond just something very basic and simple.
It's just a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to receive. It's an emotional point. But it can be freeing. I remember one business leader, and I forgot where I read this, and maybe you know this, but he said, if it's just not working out for them and the company, you're doing them a huge favor by letting them move on to something that's a better fit. You're actually helping, and it's hard to explain that in that moment, but it is better for that person that they can move on with their lives and be successful somewhere else.
I agree with that, and I think if someone may be getting recruiting calls, they may have opportunities come along that would be a better fit for them, but people are reluctant to change, even when they're in a bad situation. Sometimes they know where the skeletons are, so to speak, and so they may pass up an opportunity that would have been a great choice for them if they had known that their performance was not acceptable, or they had been able to read the writing on the wall that, hey, I'm in danger here, I'm in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I decided to do something about my performance, I'm really not happy here. This isn't a place I want to be. And you could have a better outcome for all parties if you're just fulfilling your obligation as a manager to give them the feedback. And then if you're the employee getting the feedback, you need to decide, is this something I'm up for? Can I make these changes? And if I do, is this going to be a place I want to be? And if it's not, start looking. Or
I've known people, and I know we got a lot of folks out there that may have been in this position, friends of mine that have been terminated or changed jobs, and have come back to me, and we having a chat, having a coffee or something, going, the best thing that ever happened to me was moving on from that, because I'd still be there. It was tough in the moment, but it was really a blessing in my life that now I got to explore something else.
Yeah. And that opens the door to say some other stupid things. We had a situation one time where the manager, it was a female, and knew that she had several kids. And he said, look at this as a positive. Now you'll have a lot of time to bond with your children at home. And, it was really insulting to
Wow.
her to think. And did that play a role in the decision to terminate me? I mean, you're talking about kids in my termination meeting. Are these related?
Sure.
And of course, the manager's trying to reassure them, and, look at the positive side of this. And there could be some positives, but.
So you can just talking too much is just not a good idea.
Yes,
Wow.
indeed.
Just saying too many things.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's like
You need to plan for that meeting.
you'll get to be a better mother now than you were.
There you go.
Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine doing anything even worse than that. It's just a crazy world, and with this kind of economy and businesses being so marginal, I guess this is even more so an important time because on both sides, as a business, you're struggling. People are having to make critical decisions all the time because things are what they are, and as an employee, you don't have that comfort level that if you get terminated, there's something quickly to fall back on. This is a tough economy right now.
It really is. And we advise companies, depending on the nature of the separation and, how risky it is, there are things that a company can do to soften the landing, like outplacement, where they actually pay a third-party company to come in and provide coaching, job search coaching, and making sure that the employee that's departing has an up-to-date resume and talks to them about what they'd be suited to do, what type of company, what type of position, in what area, and they can actually help them make some contacts in the markets to get their job search started, kind of a quick start. That's one way that companies can soften the landing, and we see a lot of that happening. And it's really when the economy is tanking, sometimes they second guess making an investment in that. But I think it's a risk management tool too, because if the employee can leave feeling good about the company despite what's happening, everyone wins. And I think that's a great way to help the employee get past what's just happened to them and get them focused on the future. And really get them thinking about the future instead of dwelling on the past. If they're sitting at home with nothing to do, that's what they're going to think about and get angrier perhaps and lash out in ways we can't imagine. So I think outplacement can be a good thing to do. And severance is another. And I think offering severance pay, and it can be something nominal, and 2 or 3 weeks of pay up to several weeks or months, and including outplacement, to where you could give them a separation agreement, have them sign a waiver that they would sue you or pursue a claim against you in return for getting the outplacement and the severance pay. It's just it's an insurance policy, basically, for the company. And the thing it does for the employee, it's income continuation. It's a few weeks of pay that they may not otherwise have had. Again, it softens the landing, and everybody's better off in that regard, I think.
Should you offer to do a good reference for somebody, even though it didn't work out with you guys in that moment, or is there time for that later?
That's one of the questions typically an employee's going to ask, what's going to happen in terms of a reference. And I think that for the most part, companies are so shy of giving a reference of any kind. Most of the time, the official policy statement is we'll give a neutral reference. So everybody gets the same reference. And I think if I'm leaving an employer, having been separated, that's probably okay with me. But it's a good idea to ask what the policy is so you know what to expect. And if you're the company, I think a neutral reference is okay. You're not saying anything negative, but you're not going out on a limb and saying anything positive. But it's not very common that they would give a positive reference.
Okay, the termination's done. The employee's moved on. Then they call you back and say, I'm applying for a new job. I need a reference. What do I tell them about why I left? How open and honest do you need to be with the other prospective employer to keep yourself out of any kind of liability with why that person was terminated?
Well, I think honesty is always the best policy. And I think you can put a spin on anything to make yourself look better. But I think that if you're terminated for cause and maybe it was performance related, maybe you'd gotten feedback, you could just say, we decided it was in our best interest to mutually just part ways. And I think you can be honest about the performance feedback you got and just say, I didn't agree with it, because it's one person's opinion versus the other. You can talk about the things I did do to make changes. You can talk about the turmoil that was in the company or perhaps the management style you were working under. I mean, you don't want to go too far to be negative about the prior employer. So I think as little as you can say, the better. And most companies that are interviewing you are probably going to understand that they're not going to get a lot of reference information from the prior employer anyway. They try to contact the supervisors, but everybody's pretty much clamped down on that. They don't let supervisors give reference. Most of those calls have to go to HR, and they're very trained on giving neutral references. So it's not very likely that a negative reference is going to haunt you in your job search.
That's interesting because you got a lot of folks out there that are still looking, maybe either quit or got terminated in this kind of economy with this kind of unemployment. So are you just wasting your time trying to cite references and get references, or sometimes they ask them, sometimes they don't? Should you not give them unless they ask?
Usually that's the best practice. Don't give them unless they're asked. And generally they'll ask for personal and professional references. And
Yeah.
it can be someone that you worked with at another company. It doesn't have to be anyone at the current company or the company you just left. But I think it's fairly safe to give the HR contact at your company, especially if you ask that in the separation meeting. You know, what kind of reference can I expect to get? Who would be the point of contact for that reference? I don't think you don't want to run from it. You don't want to hide it. I mean, I've seen cases where someone just neglects to put that employer on their resume or leaves it off the application, and so there's a gap there that they cover by falsifying information. That's not the way to do that. Just if it didn't work out, I think it's safe to say it didn't work out, but have a good explanation for why it didn't, and maybe what you've learned from that and how you can leverage that with the next employer, and maybe that it's helped you become more aware of what you're looking for now in your next employer. And that's why I'm interested in your company, because I just had an experience that I learned from, and I know now, based on my research, that you're a good fit for me. You're a better fit for me than where I was.
It's a better way
Put a
to say
positive
it.
spin on it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So if maybe you have multiple situations like this in your past, some people are just difficult.
That's
Let's
true.
just be honest.
That's true.
From the employee side, how do you work around that? If you've had a couple of situations that didn't work out, maybe it was just a bad run of luck, bad economy. I don't know.
Well, I think you need to look in the mirror first of all. If you're getting fired frequently from positions or they just don't work out, and maybe you're not getting reasons why, or maybe you're a little bit suspect, I think you need to examine, what's going on here, because there are employees who are just bad apples sometimes. That for whatever reason, they're not compliant. They don't accept direction very well. They want to be a maverick and kind of be on their own. And in some organizations, you can be very autonomous and make your own decisions and not have to follow instructions. But it's very rare unless you own the place. You've got to answer to somebody, and you're going to deal with people who you don't like and that maybe don't like you, and you need to learn to deal with that. And so I think if you see a pattern in your employment history that you're jumping around, that's going to hurt you, because one of the things that HR people are trained to do, and managers, are look for job hoppers and short-term employment. Now, if most of those have been temporary short-term employment assignments and you know that going into it, you can explain that.
So it's a tough subject, and I knew it'd be a tough subject when we talked about it tonight. But you got to be up front and get this stuff out on the table. What's harder from your perspective, being an expert on this, hiring people or firing people? Because, I mean, you could make a huge mistake by not doing your process and getting good people to start with and then cause yourselves problems. But on the other hand, there's so much legal stuff attached to the other end.
Yeah, I think because there's so much more risk with a termination and people are so much more uncomfortable with that conversation, that's the hardest one to really master. Mm-hmm. You're probably hiring a lot more than you're firing anyway. So to get really good at it, it's hard unless you do a lot of it. And if you're doing a lot of firing, there are other problems. But I think you need to really do your homework. You need to, before you decide to terminate someone, look at the file. Make sure that what's in the file is consistent with the reason we're making this decision, the reason we're going to give this person for terminating. Because if you say attendance is a problem, and their last performance rating, they got a 10 on that, perfect, or it bragged about their attendance, you don't want inconsistencies there. Know the reason for the termination. Have your script prepared. Go into that meeting with in mind that it's going to be short, 10 to 15 minutes.
Sure.
And be very succinct in the reason. Don't chit-chat. Be prepared to answer the questions you're probably going to get about why.
Charles Wilkinson, he's the president of Human Resource Management. Man, I learn something every time you come in here. I get wrapped up in, it's like just a business class in education. And this is all brought to you by our good friends at First Partners Bank, helping us out on Thursdays, bringing these segments to you. And Bethany Meadows works with them quite a bit. Bethany, y'all, now I want to plug the forum that's coming up. That's just in a few days. Tell me everything that's going on with that over in Irondale.
Yes, we're doing a social media 101 workshop. So this is ideal if maybe you're not that active with your business on social media and you want to learn step by step how to set it up, what kinds of engagement that you should be doing to attract your prospects and customers to your page, how to build those pages, an ideal profile pic, cover pic, that kind of thing.
Very good for small businesses that are just trying to find other ways to market. Now, this is at the Irondale Public Library. I got it all right in front of me here. October 29th, lunchtime thing, and I love it the way you do it in the middle of the day. Y'all get it done. 11:30 to 1?
And 11:30 to 1, and we provide lunch. You can RSVP by calling Michelle Hamrick at 205-951-1415. And you can also follow First Partners Bank on Facebook because we post everything that we're doing up there. And so it's a good way to kind of keep touch with, when the magazine's coming out and that kind of thing.
First Partners is just an outstanding institution, an outstanding partner of ours, helping teach people about business. It's 6:30. Stay tuned.
My name is Elam Holly, and I am the CEO of First Partners Bank, member FDIC. While some might think it's unusual for a bank to step outside the box and provide resources for business owners, we believe that being a great bank is just the beginning. We want to be your banking partner in life and in business, for now and the journey ahead, because your story is our story. Our success is tied to yours. We call it partnership banking, and it's the core of our mission. In fact, at First Partners Bank, we have developed an entire program of resources designed to help small business owners grow and succeed. They include the Tools for Success blog, the Small Business Workshop series, Tools for Success magazine, and of course, the Tools for Success radio program. Each of our Tools for Success initiatives are free and available to every business owner in the community, whether or not they're a customer of First Partners Bank. We've even set up a special website just for Tools for Success at yousucceed-wesucceed.com, where you can learn more about all the resources available for business owners. While you're there, you can subscribe to the blog, check the schedule for our next workshop learning event, browse through the virtual copy of the latest issue of the magazine, or listen to a podcast of the radio program. We are bankers, but first and foremost, we are partners. Partners with our customers, partners with our community. Our philosophy, our mission, our purpose is simple. When you succeed, we succeed. Call us today at 205-822-5500 and let us show you what partnership banking is all about.